Hey everybody, and welcome to today's News Tonight, the weeknight news show where we're joined by special guests and our lovely patrons to discuss the day's gaming news. I'm your host, Ash Paulson, and today I'm joined by my good friend and GVG co-founder, Steve Bowling, and a cardboard car, and that's our... Derrick has decided to move on to greener pastures. No, so Derrick unfortunately is running late. He's stuck in traffic, so Steve copied a picture of this lovely car into where he would normally be, his camera feed would be. And so, yeah, hopefully he will join us, partway through this recording. But otherwise, today we don't actually have a special guest, so it's just going to be me and Steve and possibly Derrick if he gets here halfway through. But before we jump into the news, Steve, how was this is our first post-Christmas, post-holidays episode of TNT. How were your holidays, man?
Oh, man, they were so good. I mentioned it in our pre-show, which you can get over at patreon.com/gvgaming, shameless plug. But I spent a lot of time just playing games for fun, which I really don't get to do often enough. I played a lot of Phantasy Star Online 2. I played a lot of Street Fighter, which, again, I have to try to stay away from when I have other things to do because I can get sucked into just hours of ranked matches. And I played a bit of Super Mario 35. I had a lot of fun. I had all my kids home. We baked cookies. We did the whole, the whole traditional Christmas thing that families do. I wore an ugly sweater. So nice. It was a really great time, and I really enjoyed disconnecting from the internet and just spending time with family and video games and all that fun stuff, man. I do miss the ability to go out and do things and see people, because the one thing I definitely missed this year was all my friends, right? Like all the people that don't live with me. So I miss that a lot. I miss the typical like pre-Christmas parties and that kind of thing. So hopefully those will return next year, but it definitely was good. Definitely a good, quiet holiday. How about yours, man?
Pretty much the same. I mean, my wife and I just kind of hunkered down. Neither of us saw our families because, of course, of everything going on, which was definitely a shame. We miss our families, we miss our friends, but just all in the interest of safety first and health first, and hopefully by this time next year, all this is a distant memory, and we'll all be vaccinated, and we can all just get back to at least some sense of normal life, whatever that even means anymore. But yeah, we just kind of hunkered down, played some games, and watched some movies. We watched Soul, the Pixar's new movie, Soul, and I just ugly cried my way through pretty much the second half of that movie. It was just all me ugly crying. It was certainly not unassailable. There are criticisms to be made of the movie for sure, but I really enjoyed it, and it was one of those up style. I think the more of an adult, like the older you are, the more it resonates. I think for kids, it's probably it's a fun movie. But if you're an adult,
I need to see that, because my wife calls up my cry movie, which is absolutely true. Anytime I feel like I need to get some hard feelings out and have a good cry, I put on Up. So
same. I do the same thing.
Man, knowing Soul hits that same way, I might have to watch it sooner rather than later. My kids have seen it, but yeah, like you said, to kids, it was just a fun movie. They're like, yeah, it was pretty good. So...
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely hit in the same way. Maybe not quite to that level, because, I mean, Up is just... It's like driving a stake through your stomach. It's especially if you're an adult. But Soul gets there for sure. It definitely it's up there too. And you can't really tell in the back, but we've got our first rainstorm in LA.
Oh, wow.
Over the past 24 hours. Probably the first rain we've had, or at least serious rain we've had in literally 8 or 9 months or something. Like, for someone like me who loves rainy, windy, stormy weather, and to live in LA is kind of rough because it's always so reliably warm and sunny here. But me being me, at about 12:30 a.m. Today, I guess it was coming down in sheets, which of course was my cue to go out in my shorts and t-shirt and just soak it all up and just be like, make me feel alive again, like Gray Fox style in Metal Gear Solid. But so I just kind of got my holiday winter storm in, and that was a lot of fun. Nice. And as I mentioned to you, or showed you guys in the channel, my younger sister-in-law came. She was my Secret Santa this year, and she got me these for Christmas. She got Okami HD and Yakuza 7. Now, of course, people know Okami is like my second favorite game of all time, but now I can play it in 4K. And so I specifically requested the PS4 version. I have to see that game in 4K because it's already mind-blowing. at 1080p.
Nice.
And that was not an intentional Game Explain review reference, but yeah, it was mind blowing in 1080p. And Yakuza 7. So I don't know when I'll get a chance to play it, but I so want to, and I've been so just itching to get into Yakuza. So other than that, though, I mainly just played, other than stuff with my wife, I played some Age of Calamity over the holidays, just because that's one of those very rare games where it's actually making me want to 100% it. I never want to 100% games anymore, but I guess, there's my signature Los Angeles siren in the background. But yeah, I can't get enough of this game, and I think it's because everything's so streamlined that there's obviously some grinding to do to get to 100%, but it's nowhere near the level of grinding you would need to do in a game like the original Hyrule Warriors. Like, not even close. So it's
That's true.
Yeah, so it's like it's just tractable enough that I want to get 100% and just see everything, because it's such a fun game. And it's just great to look at, even despite the performance issues. I was just having a great time with it. So
yeah, I think that I like Hyrule Warriors plenty. I didn't feel like after I beat it I needed to keep going, but now that I know some of the stuff you unlock as you continue to grind towards 100%, I'm like, man, I might need to come back, because
you might need to.
Some of those late, end game unlockables are ridiculous. Like, they're really good ones for once. So,
right,
when I find the time,
exactly. Well, plus, I mean, you should at least do the first major unlockable, because that kind of comes with the true ending, or like a second part of the ending, kind of.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's worth seeing. Yeah,
yeah. I'm almost there to that one, so I'll probably end up doing that before our discussion.
Yeah, that definitely choked me up, that kind of extra ending that you get. So it's
nice.
Worth checking it out. Just really quick, I've seen some people in the chat during the pre-show talk about the Capcom Retro Station that literally just got confirmed for a worldwide release. That happened as we were going into, recording on this show. So we won't be talking about that today, but we'll very likely cover it on Wednesday. So if you're wondering where that story is, that's just, it literally dropped as we were getting this started. So yeah, that's why we are not going to talk about that today. But with that said, Steve, you were talking about playing some retro games over the holidays earlier, and I think that's a really great way to start. So let's go ahead and get our first news story up on the screen here.
Sure thing.
And this comes by way of NBC Connecticut, and this is just a really cool feel-good story to start us off after the holidays. So, a Dallas house was a suburban Dallas house was transformed into a life-size Super Mario Brothers 3 set, where essentially, like, they built this they turned, I guess, what looks like their steps, or the area in front of their steps, into an NES console with two controllers in front, and then they painted their garage door, or at least I guess they're not their garage door, but a side of their house, to resemble a screenshot from Mario 3. And it's such a cool creative endeavor. And the reason why these people did it, Katie Milam is one of the people who owns the house, who that transformed into Mario 3, and she says she just wanted to spread cheer and silliness and playfulness. From the news story, Katie and her husband Mike transformed their house into a giant Nintendo gaming system, complete with a Mario Brothers game playing on a makeshift television screen. So, what do you think of this, Steve? Have you seen these really cool pictures yet?
Yeah. I was actually just looking at them as you were reading the story, just because I hadn't had a chance to, because we were kind of in a rush. So I love this. I mean,
right?
We were just talking about how the holidays have been kind of rough, and this year with everything going on, that it's been a little hard to feel that same amount of cheer and good vibes that you feel around the holidays usually. So for somebody to go out of their way, for no clear, real benefit to do something like this is just so awesome. Because I know one of my favorite things, again, in this really weird time that we're in, was to take my kids out, and we just hop in the car and go drive around and look at Christmas lights or decorations that people put up. We'd get some hot chocolate, we'd drive around, because we wanted the kids to have fun, but we wanted to stay safe. And I couldn't help but think about how thoughtful people have been this holiday season. Just decorating their houses, putting out crazy awesome displays like this for people to enjoy. They don't get paid for this. There's no monetary gain. There's no real end run here. So it's really cool for people to just do this to make both themselves. I'm sure creating something like this as a creator would make you feel really proud. I'd be really proud.
Yeah.
But also just to make it, to give the people in your community, or in this case, all over the world at this point, something to look at and enjoy. It's just a kind thing to do. And I think it's incredibly cool. And of course, it helps that it relates to one of my favorite games ever. So all around, I love this.
And Katie Milam, she even says it had to be Mario 3. We like the classics. And she kind of touches on why they even did it. And as you said, Steve, this served really no monetary purpose for them. They did it simply to bring a little light into people's lives. And I quote, "We hope that people that come by with their kids in the car can tell them, and it can trigger childhood memory conversations. And I remember when I played Super Mario," she said. "And if somebody who is having a bad day, you want them to drive by and hopefully smile, bring a little bit of joy to people's lives." And that's what the holidays are all about, right? And she said the response has been exactly what they wanted. People honking their horns, hanging out the window, waving at us. She said, "We just wanted to spread cheer and silliness and playfulness." And so I figured, what a perfect way to start us off after the holidays, because
Absolutely.
it's a feel-good story. And you don't see grand, transformative, things like this very often done to an entire house. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I'll have to make sure to retweet those photos later. But moving on, we're going to go from Nintendo heartwarming to Nintendo weird. So let's go ahead and get the Kanye West story up on the screen.
Whoa.
Right? So I don't even know where to begin here, but former NOA president Reggie Fils-Aimé has revealed that an opportunity came out while he was still working with a company. An opportunity came about for Nintendo to work with Kanye West, essentially saying that Kanye approached Nintendo and basically said, "I want to work with you." And for various reasons, it didn't work out. We can wax poetic forever on whether that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
But basically, Kanye approached them at E3 and spent some time at the Nintendo booth. I guess he was able to spend some time with Miyamoto at the time, but wasn't able to get the meeting he wanted with Reggie and Nintendo in general at E3. So later, he had Nintendo come visit him at his fashion designer office, whatever his company is, in Calabasas. And they had this whole meeting. And Kanye's like, "I want to work with you guys." And Fils-Aimé basically said it's not going to happen. They were too busy. I don't know what they would have ended up working on. It's even hard to imagine, though. What kind of game could Kanye work on with Nintendo?
I think, Kanye, this isn't even the first time he's expressed interest in creating a game. Didn't he create one about his mom's ascension to heaven or something real out there before?
Did he? He probably. I mean, this is Kanye West. So
I know he
I'm gonna
announced.
assume he did.
Yeah, I know he announced at some point years and years ago that he was making a video game. Rob Arman X mentions the same thing I'm trying to bring up here less eloquently. What wasn't Kanye making a mobile game about his mom and God? Yes. So
okay.
I can only imagine that it was just something insanely off the wall, like just out there. Kanye strikes me as the type of artist who has like a uncompromising vision, and just it's his way or not at all. And I can't imagine Nintendo of all companies wanting to take that risk. Like, Nintendo is already an incredibly risk-averse company. Like, they do not put themselves out there on things that are not a sure thing, and they have a very clear, I would say, of the three like major players, Nintendo has the clearest image of what they want their brand to be. And like, I think Microsoft or Sony would have been much more likely to give him the time of day. But I understand, as someone who is a fellow nerd, like Kanye is definitely a nerd. I understand that if I was in his position and stature in the world and I could write my own blank check and get a meeting with friggin' Miyamoto, I absolutely would. Nintendo would be the company I would choose too. So credit to him for trying, but I'm not going to fault Nintendo for not going with the pitch on this one, because I cannot imagine him making something that would sit next to Mario. Like, I just can't imagine something that would vibe well with Nintendo's image coming out of his mind. So take what you will. I think that I can't, you miss all the shots you don't take. But I'm definitely glad he missed this one.
Well, it's funny too, because apparently Reggie's initial attempt at kind of politely shutting this idea down kind of blew up in his face. And this, by the way, comes from Nintendo Everything. And the quote from Reggie is that we had so many different projects at Nintendo going on. The possibility of doing something with Kanye just wasn't there. And so I had to find a way to politely decline this opportunity to work with him. I told him, Kanye, you don't want to work with us because we're tough, we're hard. All we do is push for the very best content. We would not be the type of partner you would want to work with. And he looks at me and says, Reggie, you're exactly the type of partner I want because of that reason. It's like, oh my gosh. Now, there are two things there. One, obviously that blew up in his face. But two, I'm sure in context, it's not as rude as it sounds. But it does sound as though he's throwing shade at Kanye by saying, we do the best stuff. You don't want to work with us, or our quality standards are too high. I'm sure that's not what he meant. But it doesn't sound good either.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't sound good. And definitely, even as someone who I'm not a fan of Kanye.
Same.
But even as someone who's not a fan, I probably could have predicted that answer. So, yeah, seems like a weird choice to me anyway for that. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mourn the loss of Kanye's failed pitch.
But Reggie did say Nintendo walked away with the feeling that Kanye has such a passion for the video game space, and he's a creator. And big deal, he also confirmed that Kim Kardashian was there in attendance as well. I don't know why that's important, but it's in the story.
I will say that I can at least attest to the fact that he is a fan of games. Like, one of my E3s, I was previewing Street Fighter V. Before, obviously before it came out, so 2017 maybe. And he just showed up. Like, he just showed up and started playing Street Fighter V on one of the preview builds that they had out of nowhere. And I remember thinking, like, I was still kind of sort of new to E3, so I was like, dude, famous people just show up? Like, what is this? It was weird too, because it was such, like, I mean, Kanye was not a celebrity I expected to. I didn't meet him, but, I was like 8 feet away from him. And
right.
The same year I was at Bandai Namco's booth testing out a new Naruto game. And I got bumped off because Enrique Iglesias wanted to play.
What?
And I was like, I remember being like, what? Like, just random B-list pop stars show up, huh? And I have to leave. Like, I was in the middle of recording and they're like, hey, you got to go.
That's
Enrique Iglesias is coming, and I was like, this is the weirdest bump I've ever gotten in my life. Like, I could understand if it was somebody who, like, was bigger in the game space than me. There's plenty of those. But like a dude that sells some CDs from time to time, like,
yeah, I mean, not even an A-list non-gaming celebrity. Like, even if it's an A-list non-gaming celebrity, it sucks, but you can kind of understand, right? But this is like not even an A-lister.
Yeah, I gotta go with Rob Arman X, though. He does have more Twitter cred than me, so I guess if he tweeted out that the new Naruto game was cool, maybe that would help, but
that's true.
I doubt he did that. I also never saw him. They just told me he was coming, and I had to leave immediately, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to their credit, though, Bandai Namco did, like, apologize profusely and then sent me, like, 3 copies of the game when it came out for some reason. It was really cool that they even remembered they did that and that they hooked me up after the fact. But it was just the weirdest circumstance ever.
Yeah. Well, we've got some great ideas in the chat here for Kanye-related content with Nintendo. Z Patty says, would he have changed Mario boots to Yeezys? Whereas Rob Arman X says Kanye spirit for Smash. And my favorite, 112 says Splatoon music DLC, but it's Kanye songs. Can you imagine playing Splatoon to Kanye songs?
No.
Oh man, I can't either. It's probably better that we don't.
Yeah.
On that note, let's keep things on Nintendo and move on over to our MariCar story.
All right.
And this one's pretty interesting. So Nintendo has finally won a multi-year lawsuit against an outfit in Japan called MariCar, which you may have seen pictures of before. It's basically a service in Japan. Believe it's in Akihabara. That lets you essentially race real-life Mario Karts or Mario Kart-esque karts around the streets of Akiba. I believe it's Akiba. And clearly, there's major copyright infringement going on here. And for some reason, this case took 3 years to decide because Nintendo originally filed the lawsuit back in 2017. But now, as of today, and this comes by way of Go Nintendo, by the way, Japan's Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Nintendo, and MariCar now owes Nintendo 50 million yen.
Wow.
Which, I mean, but if you look at the service they were offering, and you look at the costumes and the the clearly Mario Kart inspired kart designs, how else did they think this was going to end? How else could it have ended?
So interestingly, 112 and Jared Edinger appear to have a little bit more context on this story. So
Oh, great.
112 says, I actually support Nintendo on this lawsuit. These people caused hell for traffic in this area.
Right, I heard
apparently
about that.
caused a lot of issues with traffic flow. And Jared Edinger says, I think it's more than just Akiba because that wasn't where he saw it. So that's interesting. I know very little about this story. You know, I know the broad strokes that these guys very clearly copied Nintendo and let people drive carts around, which I imagine... I've never been to Japan. I know you have, Ash. But I imagine just getting around on foot there is already a hassle. So having people taking Mario Kart tours might add to that pain. So, I mean, but plus, even if you take the social responsibility aspect out of it, I mean, they're very clearly just ripping off Mario Kart down to the name, MariCar.
Yeah, exactly. And doing so in the course of promoting a business that could result in real life injuries. I mean, this is something that's not necessarily safe or kosher. So, I mean, there are so many reasons Nintendo would have wanted to file suit against them, and I'm surprised it took them this long to win. I am with you, Rob Arman X and 112. I totally support Nintendo in this. And I say that as someone who came very close to being able to try this when I was in Japan one of the times. We just never got around to it, unfortunately, but I did see... apparently, this happens in places other than Akihabara, but where I saw it, actually happening in front of me was Akiba, and it seemed really cool. I wanted to try it, but I just never got around to it, and perhaps now I never will because I don't know if it'll still be a thing when I go back next time. But I do remember it causing traffic issues when I saw it. It doesn't seem like the safest thing, so I don't know if they're going to try to rebrand themselves as something not MariCar, something other. I don't know, some generic.
Maybe we'll get Crash Team Racing carts instead.
Crash Car. But yeah, so I don't know if this is enough to sink them. 50 million yen, that's a lot of money. That might just put them out of business. Who knows? But maybe they'll try to rebrand and do something that's not so outwardly and obviously riffing on the Mario Kart IP. So. There's another siren. That's siren number 2.
I like Charlie Bird's suggestion, Sonicar.
Sonicar, yeah, I love that. And
Garfield car.
Garfield, God. Going back to the previous story really quick, I did not know about this, but Azran127 says now they're thinking back to Wiz Khalifa filing copyright strikes on Chrono Trigger because he sampled Scala's theme in a song. I didn't know that.
Wow.
That is so fucked, straight up. If he knows he sampled Scala's theme and he's filing copyright strikes against Chrono Trigger music.
Yeah, that's awful.
I had never heard about that. Thank you for the for that knowledge drop, Azran. That's wild. Wow. Speaking of wild, we've got some Cyberpunk news to share with everybody. It's just the news train that just keeps on giving. And there's a lot to unpack here. So essentially, things have gone from bad to worse for CD Projekt Red in the aftermath of Cyberpunk 2077's launch. Very problematic launch at that. And that is that CDPR's investors have now filed suit against the company in retaliation for the damages incurred. They feel they've incurred from Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous launch. And so they're getting it on all sides now, from the fans, from the investors. And, it's not hard to see why they bungled this launch. I mean, more than they possibly could have, I think. I mean, I think it was such a stumbling out of the gate. And it's not as though they stumbled and then they kind of recovered. They've continued to stumble. And a perfectly emblematic, or a point that's perfectly emblematic of that is that they did finally release a patch for the PC version that fixes that save corruption bug, but it doesn't fix your corrupted save. So that's great. If you can start a new game if you want, but if you already had your save corrupted, too bad. Deal with it. This just continues to be a mess.
This is tough for me because I feel like I'm on the periphery of this because I've had, I'm done with the game. I beat it a while ago. But I've not had any of the huge problems people are having. And I feel bad because as a critic, I try to paint a picture of my experience, and I generally largely experienced that whatever I find with a game is the same for the people that end up playing it after my review or my work is done. And the experience that I'm seeing online is so different from what I played.
Right.
And I mean, I like the game. I don't think it's the revolutionary, groundbreaking title people expected or wanted it to be. I don't think even if it had no bugs that it would be that. I think it would be a perfectly fine RPG. I think it would be one of those,
Sure.
you know, not remarkable, but not bad by any stretch. I think I would probably, I mentioned this somewhere on a previous episode, that I probably, had it been a perfectly finely tuned game, probably would have reached great vibes instead of just good for me. But it never would have been, not even in a perfect world, it never would have come close to hitting pure bliss at all.
Right.
And I think that's fine. You know, it could still, it would have been one of the better experiences I had this year if it had been launched in a better state.
Sure.
But that being said, like, I keep thinking about it, you know, and I'm like, man, I love the world. I love the characters. I would love to have a good reason to go back. I don't have that. You know, and maybe in 6 months I will have that reason. Maybe multiplayer will come out and it'll be fun and all the platform bugs will be ironed out and we'll actually have a next gen version. I don't know. But I gotta say, like, I look at all this and again, you know, I say this a lot about a lot of different topics on this show, but games are not created by one person, and there's not one decision maker in any of these companies that make these bad decisions.
Yeah.
So again, I have to think that there had to be someone saying, man, if we release it like this, we are going to get sued. Like, someone somewhere in CDPR, you imagine, had to like raise their hand and be like, this is going to cost us lots of money if we release it like this, like more than you guys want to spend. And a group of people had to agree that, yep, nope, we'll just do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that is amazing to me. It's always amazing to me because I think about, you know, the small decisions in my life. And if someone gives me a dissenting opinion, like, I'll sit there and puzzle over that for hours. You know, I'll be like, am I really making a mistake? Is this truly a bad decision I'm about to make? You know, I mean, we recently launched a whole new channel. that didn't happen, you know, without any thought going into it. It's like, oh boy, what are we about to do to ourselves, right? So I don't know. I try to feel sympathy for CDPR, and the only thing I can come up with is that I feel truly, truly bad for the rank and file developers, artists. You know, it sucks because these guys probably went from the craziest high of their careers, being attached to the biggest, most hyped game of the year, you know, to being the subject of ridicule. And it is, I want to point this out because we talk about this game too much, but it is categorically not the fault of the average person that worked on this game that it is the way it is. It is absolutely the fault of the executives who decided it had to come out now. This is bad management, not poor development. Like, I will not accept people saying, you know, the people that poured their souls into this game and worked a stupid amount of hours, an unconscionable amount on this, are bad at their jobs. They aren't. You don't get a job in game dev by being on the biggest game of the year by being bad at your job. You end up getting smeared inadvertently when someone decides that your work, though unfinished, needs to be released to meet a financial goal.
Yeah, I mean, this is where that damn L word rears its ugly head, and I hate it every time I hear it. It's like nails on a chalkboard. Game developers are not lazy. The game development is not a lazy thing. It's too difficult. If you're going to get into game development, it's not because you're a lazy person. It's tough. And, you know, this is exactly the kind of stuff that causes people to label game devs as lazy. And it's, as Steve said, this is on the execs, the suits that forced this game to come out when it did, and not at all on the rank and file developers who poured not only hours upon hours of their lives, we're talking about 8 or 9 years of their careers. This game was made across the span of like 8 or 9 years. You don't spend that much of your life on something because you're lazy.
Yeah,
like
to contextualize this, when this game was announced, I did not have children. I have 4. children now.
Right.
And one of them is almost 8, so she's about as old as Cyberpunk. That is terrifying. So yeah, it's a lot that people poured into creating this, and it sucks that it was rushed out the door this way, because I would have given them another 6 months and made it right the first time around. So I feel for you folks at CDPR. I hope that y'all can move past this and put this game behind you. I hope we can put it behind us soon.
But here's the ugly truth, though, is I found this story on inverse.com, kind of adding some extra context to all this. Despite this disastrous launch, despite all the bullshit that has happened surrounding Cyberpunk, it has still managed to sell 13 million copies so far. So it's considered by any measure to be a massive success. And that, unfortunately, I think sends all the wrong messages.
It really does. It's unfortunate. This is the way the industry is. Marketing is a hell of a tool, and any amount of negative backlash can't really counteract effective marketing. Not right now, anyway. There are huge changes that have to happen all over the industry, but that'll take time, and it will take people withholding their funds. Like, if you don't buy a game that is, if you disagree and you're actually willing to put your wallet where your money where your mouth is, then stuff like this might continue. But hopefully, journalists are doing a much better job shining a light on this kind of stuff. And there is negative backlash. I just hope that at some point that equates to lost sales.
Yeah, and of course we don't know how much of those profits that all the refunds have cut into, of course. So
True.
That doesn't tell the whole story. So yeah, we'll see where things go from here. We'll see if the investor lawsuit is ultimately successful. I'm not a legal expert, so I can't possibly make any sort of predictions on that end. But CDPR has a continued long-term shitstorm ahead of them, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't expect this to go away anytime soon, for better and worse, as you said, Steve, because I'm kind of tired of talking about Cyberpunk too. With that said, though, let's go ahead and wrap up with some positive news. 3 of our favorite developers have teased about what they're working on for the next year going into 2021. So let's start with Square Enix.
All right. Throwing that up on the screen now.
And this comes from Famitsu by way of My Nintendo News. And a few Square Enix employees have chatted to Famitsu about their plans for 2021. Now, there's nothing hugely groundbreaking here, more confirmation of things you'd already expect, but it's still nice to know. So 3 main points here. Bravely Default 2 producer Tomoya Asano mentioned that he hopes the game will be successful and to move on to the next game afterward. So that pretty much seems to be implicitly confirming that if Bravely Default 2 does well, that the Bravely series will continue. And hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers, that means we'll actually get Bravely 3rd and not Bravely Default 3. I want a proper conclusion to the original Bravely Default, Bravely 2nd story. Second, for those of you who played it, they know that it ends on a massive cliffhanger. Massive. No. Default 2 is a completely new story, new world, no ties to second, and that's fine. But I still want to go back to Bravely 3rd. So hopefully that's where they go from Default 2 if the game is successful, which I assume it probably will be. Moving on, producer Masashi Takahashi, who also worked on Octopath Traveler, also added that there has been progress made in parallel on other games. And I assume that means in parallel to Bravely Default 2. So who knows what that means? Maybe they're working on an Octopath sequel, possibly. What do you get from that, Steve?
I'm not very far up on the development of these games, but I have to imagine Square Enix is working on multiple projects at any given time, which amazes me because I feel like they take longer to release anything than any other AAA studio in the world. Apparently I had the Fatal Frame story up. I apologize. I got some things out of order. We'll be talking about Fatal Frame soon.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I feel like I would imagine that whatever they're... It's hard because I've never been on the inside of game development like you have, other than like a brief stint QAing for Konami in the late 90s. Let's not talk about that.
Fair enough.
Konami's a terrible place. We'll just leave it at that. But I imagine that they have to be deep in the planning stages of whatever comes next as they wrap up development of anything, right? So I imagine that we could be getting another Octopath style game. Like the art style was so well received that it's hard to believe
Yeah,
they just abandon it completely, right? And
100%.
Square Enix has to know that they've kind of missed the mark somewhat on whatever that I don't even know how to describe it, but whatever that hook is that 16-bit RPGs had. Like I Am Setsuna didn't scratch that itch for me.
Yeah,
Octopath didn't really get its hooks into me either, and I think that's because I was expecting something more akin to like a Final Fantasy VI or a Chrono Trigger. That's what
sure.
I want. When I think 16-bit RPG, I think those magical, like, genre-defining, life-changing RPGs that did so much with so little in terms of technology. And I I mean, it's all in the narrative, and I just haven't found that in any of their more recent efforts. So I hope, that said, Octopath visually completely nailed everything I want out of an
Oh
RPG
yeah.
that's a more simplistic, non AAA game. So give me something with the story of Chrono Trigger and the visuals of Octopath, and I will be the
Oh yeah.
happiest dude in the world. Please keep trying until you
Yeah.
get it right.
And bring Yasunori Nishiki back, because Octopath soundtrack is just top tier. And
Nice.
and Octopath came so close, right? Like I really enjoy the game, but it didn't quite hit that mark for me, as you were saying, Steve, mainly because the story, while there was a decent story there, it was very disjointed, and there were very few organic interactions between the cast. You were basically playing 8 separate stories, and you had these kind of like separate interaction scenes, just to kind of inorganically get some character development there, but the party didn't exist in a natural, organic way amongst one another, right? You didn't get
Yeah.
that natural building of camaraderie among the cast. They were very canned interactions between specific characters, and it just didn't, yeah, it didn't come off in the same way something like FF6 or Chrono Trigger would. But as 112 says in the chat, if they remade Chrono Trigger or FF6 in the visual style of
Oh,
Octopath
yeah.
Traveler, as 112 also said, they think both of us would explode, Steve. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
I think,
100%. I don't know
yeah.
that I'd make it to the release of that game. My soul would leave my body immediately.
Oh my god, I don't even know how I would even cope. I would be so excited. But moving on to the final point here for Square Enix, Dragon Quest series producer Noriyoshi Fujimoto said that he'd like to announce something for the 35th anniversary of the franchise in 2021. So nothing confirmed there, but it seems to be pretty implicit that they are hopefully building towards some kind of announcement, Dragon Quest related for 2021, and perhaps it could even be Dragon Quest 12. Maybe it's time.
Yeah, maybe. I
I mean,
I want to see what happens next for Dragon Quest. I've still not played nearly enough of 11, but
yeah,
Dragon Quest is one of those series that I look at it and I'm like, I really need to play these. I owe it
yeah.
to myself to play these. And that's rare. Like usually if I see a game, I'm like, if if I get past like the month of launch without ever playing it, I usually write it off forever, which is a terrible way to do things. But as someone with limited time, I'm like, whatever. But I keep going back to uh, 11. I've heard you and Derrick and John and
Oh,
everybody else talk about it enough to
what
where
a
I'm like,
game.
I have to play this game. It is
Yeah,
really important. And to hear it even mentioned in the same breath as Chrono Trigger, I really have to play this game.
it really is just phenomenal.
And
Yeah.
then I also, I bought my brother, I think I've said this before, I bought him, I believe, Dragon Quest 8 for the PS2. Maybe it was
Oh, okay.
7. Whichever one had the hero that had the bandana and like
That's
the
8.
long coat. Okay, it is 8. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember watching him play that and just being like, wow, I need to play this too.
Uh-huh.
And I never got around to that either. So I 11, I'm going to vow to beat it in 2021. I sincerely hope, because the series is just interesting enough for me, that we get a peek at what 12 is going to be like, because I do get excited every time a new Dragon Quest is announced, even though I invariably don't play them. So I'm really interested to see what lies ahead for the series, especially because we're in a new generation now. I want to know if we're going to get Dragon Quest 12 on the PS5 or the Xbox
Right.
Series X, or if there's still going to be last gen games, if we're going to get it on the Switch or whatever comes after the Switch. Because I
Yeah.
feel like by the end of 2021, we'll have the answer to that question too. So, yeah, I would love to see some more of Dragon Quest. I think from Square, that and Final Fantasy Remake Episode 2 are the things I'm most excited for. Like, I really want to know more about Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 2.
Oh, I am so whenever they drop that, I will be there day zero, day pre-zero if possible. I mean, in a broad sense, FF7 Remake Part 2 is probably the game that I'm most hyped for in general in the next however many years it takes them to get it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that breaks my heart, it's okay for us to talk about this, but back in the Game Explain days, Square Enix had reached out to me about a Final Fantasy VII Remake preview event. And I love preview events in general.
Same.
Like, I love traveling. I love going to, like, they put you up in a hotel. You go to like a conference room. If you're lucky, they'll feed you, and you play a game while you talk to the people that made the game. Cool. But Square Enix had this plan to go all out. It was in LA, right near Ash's house, and they had sent me the materials for this. They were going to recreate Wall Market in LA and fly us out there and let us go play the game in Wall Market. And I was like, I don't fanboy very much.
Right.
And I was fanboying hard. I was like, oh my God, yes.
Of course.
Yes. And I had set it up for Derrick and Ash to go, and I was just, they were only going to fly Derrick out, and Ash lived around the corner from the place they were going to do this. And I was like, it's like a 6-hour drive for me, but I'm just going to do it. I'm crashing this thing. I'm going to. And we were all set to go. And then they just canceled the whole event, like out of nowhere. Like, I mean, 2 days before, I mean, we had conversations. Flights had been booked. I mean, it was ready to go. And Square didn't just remove us from the event. They canceled the entire thing, which is why nobody ever saw this real world Wall Market. And to this day, I mourn the loss of that event because I'm like, getting to stand in Midgar would have been the coolest thing in the world for me. So I don't know what happened. I don't know their internal reasoning. I'm obviously not mad at them. The game came out great, but definitely a little sad at the loss of being able to see what that would have been like, especially because, and I can't share this, but they had sent me like some little pictures of what it was going to look like, and it looked dope. So
oh man,
maybe for episode 2 they'll take all the money they spent on that and rebuild it or something, but you never know.
God, yeah, that's such a shame. Do you know what was the timing of the event? Was it anywhere close enough to the pandemic outbreak that might be the reason they?
I don't think so.
Like December or November?
I want to say it was November or December.
Okay, so probably a little too soon for them to cancel for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what happened, but yeah, it was definitely it was unfortunate, but maybe someday Square will invite us back to that mythical preview event. Maybe they'll hold it for another episode, because I am down. If you're listening, Square, we will go.
Yeah, if you want to reconstruct, Gungaga on an island somewhere, if you want to fly us out to an island, put us up, we're down to do that. We'll give you all the ideas that you can deliver for us if you want. But no, that would have been amazing, and it's a shame. But bringing it back to Dragon Quest, I am a dyed-in-the-wool DQ fan after 11. I always appreciated and respected the series from a distance prior to playing 11, but I had never really been into it myself. But after playing DQ 11, I am absolutely all in for whatever they're doing with the series. As I've said before, DQ 11 is one of the very best JRPGs I've ever played in my life, and I'm looking forward to what DQ 12 turns out to be. I saw a couple of suggestions in the chat from 112 and Rob Armanex that it could be Dragon Quest 4 through 6 on the Switch would make some sense, and I agree. That actually does make a lot of sense. We already have 1 through 3 on the Switch, so maybe they're working on that. Who knows? But yeah, so that wraps up our Square Enix teases for now. But let's go ahead and talk about the news story that was on the screen by accident while we were talking about this.
All right, putting that up now.
Cool. And this has me personally very hopeful and hyped, and that is that Koei Tecmo is teasing that they could be working on something for the Fatal Frame series' 20th anniversary. And I have made no secret of the fact in the past that I love the Fatal Frame series. So there hasn't really been much going on with it since Maiden of Blackwater came out on Wii U. I think it was in 2015, I believe. So it's been a good 5 years or so, almost 6, since we've seen anything happening with the series. And I'd say it's past time. It's high time. Like when I think of my favorite survival horror series, I think Silent Hill, Resident Evil, of course, but more than that, Fatal Frame. Like for me, it's Silent Hill, Fatal Frame, and I love both these series. And yeah, I don't know if they could actually get the funding for a brand new game. I don't think these games tend to sell all that well, unfortunately. At least not the more recent titles. I know Fatal Frame 4 didn't even make it out of Japan. So maybe a remaster collection though. Maybe a remaster of Maiden of Blackwater. Steve, I know you're not a big survival horror guy, so I assume you don't have too much to say about this, yeah?
Yeah, Fatal Frame isn't really my thing. I have some very, very limited experience. I want to say there was a Wii entry in the franchise. My
Yeah, that
brother,
was 4.
yeah, my brother again is a huge, huge Fatal Frame fan. I've watched him play some of them, but never really interested me. I was like, oh, it's Pokemon Snap, but scary. Like but again, I usually nope the hell out of scary games, so
Right.
definitely not my thing. But I I love it when fans get stuff like this. Like it always lifts my
Yeah.
spirits to see, that you can think a franchise is all but forgotten, and then surprise, there's something coming. So I hope that this is not just a empty tease. Konami is definitely not my favorite company in the world, but I would love to see the fans of Fatal Frame get a new game because I think it was said in the chat it's been 6 years, and
Yeah,
that is
so yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, 112 specified that Blackwater was 2014. So thank you for that correction. So yeah, it's been almost 7 years now. It's been just about 7 years, and yeah, it's well, this is actually perfect. Where is it? Azran also said in before a collection called an album. Of course, Fatal Frame needs a collection called an album. That sells
Yeah,
itself.
that would be pretty
But
good.
yeah, I reviewed Maiden of Blackwater on Wii U for Game Explain, and I really enjoyed the game. I remember at the time Derrick was talking some shit like, "Oh, it doesn't really seem that scary." I don't actually believe that he really played it or that he played it in the same way I did, like by myself at night, with in the dark, all the lights off. He was like, "No, it's not scary." Nah, screw that. Maiden of Blackwater was terrifying, and I refuse to believe that Derrick played it in the
Man,
same conditions I did. I can't.
shots fired.
Yeah, no, and he's not here to defend himself, so maybe he can address this on our next show. But
Yeah, cardboard card
um,
Derrick getting called
yeah,
out here.
well, because he kept making fun of me at the time, like, "Oh wow, you're a really easy target, Ash. Like it really isn't that scary." I don't know. I don't fully believe that he played it in the same scary, desolate setting that I did. So, Podunku in the chat says, "Imagine if Derrick joined in right now." I know, right? I
That would be
almost
the
hope that he
best
would.
possible time.
Yeah. But yeah, so I really hope there's something here. The actual quote comes from, let's see. Oh, okay. So it's interesting. The quote comes from Konami developer Keisuke Kikuchi, who is the producer behind Fatal Frame, even though Fatal Frame isn't a Konami series, which that's interesting. But he said 2020 was a year where things that were normal were no longer normal. I'd like to look at what's important and what I love once more and create a game with a fresh perspective. 2021 is also the 20th anniversary of the Fatal Frame series, so I'd like to celebrate it in some way if possible. I don't like the way he says also. That it almost sounds like an afterthought. That maybe they're not planning anything big, but even just some re-releases, like a compilation pack, would be fine with me. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But with that said, speaking of Konami, let's go ahead and get our last story up on screen.
Alrighty, here we go.
And this is pretty quick, but also just some cool news. Konami has confirmed that there are plans for a new announcement concerning Bomberman soon. And they're asking us to please look forward to it. And with Konami these days, that's a pretty tall order. It's really hard to look forward to anything Konami asks us to look forward to because there's such a shadow of their former selves. And that's not to say they don't deliver sometimes. I think most people think Super Bomberman R and the various ports of it have been a good thing for Bomberman. But then we also get things like Metal Gear Survive and and the whole MGS5 debacle. So it's really hard to see to know how excited we should get. But yeah, Konami has specifically Konami game designer Noriaki Okamura announced at Famitsu that the company has plans to reveal a new Bomberman game soon. So what could it be? As the My Nintendo News story opines, it could be Super Bomberman R Online. It could be a new Bomberman core game, or it could, unfortunately, be a mobile game. We don't really know. Are you a Bomberman fan, Steve? We haven't really
I
talked about it too much.
I am. I do enjoy
Nice.
Bomberman. So actually, one thing I've been wanting to do, and I need to try it. I'm gonna say the S word. I would like to play Bomberman on Stadia with our audience. So Bomberman, I want to say that the Stadia version supports like 100 players or some absurd number, and that you
Oh
can
wow.
stream directly to your channel from it. And it's like one of the only Stadia games that supports the feature where you literally click a button on your favorite YouTuber's stream and it dumps you into their game. And I've always wanted to try that, like as a multiplayer stream idea, because apparently, I think now that Stadia is like struggling, outwardly, they
Uh-huh.
they give everyone like 2 free months or something. They'll give you free hardware. It has all, it's in its death throes, which I hate to say, but
Yeah.
because a lot of people worked hard on making it, regardless of critical reception. But you can hop in for free for 2 months and then join the game on Stadia, and it is one of Super Bomberman R was awesome when the Switch came out, and I
Yeah.
imagine being able to play it with 99 other people would be really awesome. So,
Oh yeah.
Bomberman has always been one of my go-to, like since the 90s. When I say always, I mean longer than many of our audience members have been alive, has been one of my favorite multiplayer experiences. Like, I remember getting the SNES and the multi-tap out and playing with my friends after high school, chugging Crystal Pepsi, playing Bomberman on my parents' shag carpeted floor. Like,
Nice.
so I have a long history with Bomberman. And 112, happy birthday. Sorry,
Yeah,
seeing
I
that
just
in the
saw
chat
that.
right now. You should have said that sooner. Happy birthday. I'm
Yeah, happy
sorry I am
birthday.
so old in comparison to you. But yeah, so anytime I hear about a new Bomberman, my ears perk up, because I even enjoyed, like Bomberman 64. I thought that was great. Like
Same.
it's a cheesy, like weird take on Bomberman, but I freaking love that game.
Same.
I would say that I enjoy Bomberman games far more. I can't think of a Bomberman game I hate. So
Right.
I'm sure there is
Except Act
one.
Zero, hopefully.
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry. I've erased that one from my memory. That's a
Right.
trauma I don't want to relive. But yeah, I am very excited for something new to come out. I would love to get basically like a Tetris 99 style Bomberman going on the Switch. A more viable platform where I can just have tons of people to play it with, because I think a massively multiplayer competitive Bomberman would be really, really fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, and going back into the series history a bit, I was always a huge fan of Super Bomberman 2 on the Super Nintendo. And I'd
Nice.
love to see that brought into Super Nintendo Online with,
Yeah.
existing, because that's one of the few games that supported the multi-tap for 8 players. So let's get an 8-player enabled Super Bomberman
Nice.
2 on Super Nintendo Online. I'd be so down with that.
Dude, that would be
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I love that series though. Yeah, same. I'm a big Bomberman guy. I played so many late night multiplayer, sessions with friends growing up in 64 and Super Bomberman 2, and it's just, yeah, it's a great series. I never played Saturn Bomberman, but I've
Me
heard that's
neither.
supposed to be one of the very best ones. And yeah, so Konami, for all the crap we can talk about them right now, they did deliver with Super Bomberman R. They even delivered with a bunch of crossover character, like crossover bombers
Yep.
based on various Konami
Alucard.
characters, Alucard and the Vic Viper and Pyramid Head, and so that was really cool. So clearly, it's still something they care about. Hopefully, we'll see something soon, whatever they're actually working on. And I want to go back in the chat really quick before we wrap up. Yeah, because Azran127, our resident pun master, when we were talking about Fatal Frame, they said, I'd shudder to think what would happen if Fatal Frame didn't come to Switch. It lends itself well to it. And I just thought
Wow.
that was really good. So I had to go back and highlight that.
Azran, I am impressed as always.
Yes. But, well, with that, we have reached the end of our news journey today. So, Steve, I'd ask you where our audience can find you, but they already know because we didn't have a special guest today.
You're here.
Yeah, you're here. We're already here. So you know where you can find us. But of course, before we head out, we do have to thank all of our patrons at the producer tier and above. for helping to make this show happen, because it would not happen without you. So thank you so much. Thank you eternally for helping us make this show a reality and make the channel a reality. In addition, though, of course, a huge thank you to our patrons at the executive producer tier and above. And those wonderful people include Rob Arman X, Dan Entwistle, Z Patty, Adam O'Sullivan, Floating Mew, Christopher, The D-Pad, Vesmio, Waffle King, Kieran Phillips, Benny Yao, Rosa Bowling, aka Mama Bowling.
Hi, Mom.
Yeller, Shiny Turkey, Titus Malvolio, Jake Pelka, Michael Phone, Mitchell Herring, Jay Acosta, Game Explain, Charles Zaz, Andrew Medeiros, Jonathan Bellemare, Kitty Kong Facts, Patrick Harrison, 112, Scott Barber, Evernight Studio, Rocks the Cat, Loyal Dingo, Azran127, Phantom 23, Sean Garrett, Shadow the Cat, and Guillaume Monet. Now, of course, remember, you too can become a patron over at patreon.com/gvgaming, where you can support us at whatever level makes sense for you. For just $5 a month, though, you can watch Today's News Tonight live and interact with us and our special guests throughout the show, like our live viewers have been today. But we do have tiers that ranging from as little as $1 a month and going up to like $25 and above. So yeah, if you can support us, we'd super appreciate it. But even if you can't and you're just here watching the show, we love you anyway. We're just happy you're here with us and liking our content and supporting us that way too. So regardless, thank you so much. And that's about all we have for you today. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe as usual. But otherwise, until next time, good night and good vibes.
Bye, everyone.